Are you fascinated by the paranormal and want to hear about encounters that have happened to real-life people in real-life places? Do you need a drink to calm those nerves after hearing some scary stories?
You're listening to Booze and Bourbon.
Well, we invite you to grab a drink, whether it's a coffee or something with a little bit more spirit in it. Grab a blanket, snuggle in, because I'm Kim and that's Jen, and we're Booze and Bourbon.
Welcome back to all of our wonderful and lovely listeners. This is Booze and Bourbon, and I'm Jen, and this is the lovely Kim.
Hello, Jen. How are you?
Oh, I'm just dandy. How are you?
Oh, yeah, I'm good. All good.
Good.
It's been a pretty good week. I don't really have a whole lot to report. I mean, we have been on the Haunted AF.
Yes.
Podcast, which was really nice. Just for a quick minute, a little catch up for their season finale. But other than that, I'm good. What about you?
Well, I mean, I'd like to share some fun, exciting stories, but I don't really have any of those. More just the things are starting to open. So, it's super exciting to be able to go to the mall and stuff. So,
well, I got to ask you this. When you went to the mall, because now they're saying in Canada we should be wearing masks. Were people wearing masks at the mall or no?
It was kind of a half and half. There was, probably about 50% of people wearing masks.
Well, I guess 50% ain't all that bad, but it's not perfect. I've got a mask coming from our Redbubble store. I'm so excited. So what we've got to talk about today is Haunted Lunenburg here in Nova Scotia. It's one of the most haunted places in all of Atlantic Canada, with its rich fishing history and being a UNESCO World Heritage site. It's literally like a time capsule when you go in there. It's awesome. And anyone who's ever watched Lock and Key, it was filmed here. That's on Netflix. And there's a lot of other movies that have been filmed here as well because of its heritage feel. And it's only 25 minutes away.
And I must say, I did love Lock and Key. That was a favorite of mine. But we also have some other famous, more movies, from Haven to Dolores Claiborne to Jessie Stone. They were all filmed there as well.
Yeah, my mom is a big Jessie Stone fan. Anyway, I've got this lovely bourbon sitting here in front of us. It is Buffalo Trace from their experimental collection. So it's not just any Buffalo Trace. The experiment is called Wheat 125. It is actually aged just over 11 years, which is pretty exciting. And what else does the bottle say here? It is 45% alcohol, so 90 proof. It's chill filtered. Evaporation on this is pretty staggering. It's 71% evaporation, which is kind of crazy. Anyway, I'm going to have a little sip of this.
Oh.
Well, I'm definitely getting some cereal kind of flavors there. Lots of toasted vanilla. Really like that. It's not overly spicy. Maybe towards the finish, it's more spicy. There's some oakiness on the back there too. I think this is very delicious. And when we purchased this, we got it in the US and it's a smaller bottle. It's 375 mils. So I think these go for about $50 and up, probably depending on the bottle. But there were only 2 barrels made of this one. So I feel like this one's a little rare. But yeah, it's a good one. So recommend that. Nice little thing to add to your collection. Now that I have a warm bourbon pocket, and I'm sure you do too, Jen, would you like to play a little game called Would You Rather?
Yes, obviously I do.
Lovely. And would you like to go first?
Okay, since we're getting into vacation season and, well, sort of, and people like to travel, and...
We can't go very far, just within...
Well, you kind of can now. I mean, in Nova Scotia. I'm not talking about, we're not going to the States or anything, but...
Yeah, just within our own province. Lovely traveling.
Yes. So, let's say you and Ryan are just traveling around and you decide to go stay in this lovely, bed and breakfast.
Do they serve lots of bread?
A lot of bread. Would you rather encounter I'm going to call it a room service matron ghost that shows up at your room unannounced, of course, really at any time, and isn't necessarily scary, but they just pop up. So you could be in the bathroom, you could be in bed.
Oh my gosh, can I just tell a little story? When I was in Mexico for a vacation, I was in the tub and the room service attendant knocked on the door and I was like, hello? And she busted in the door and I had to get out of the tub with a towel on and be like, hi, what do you want?
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Not good.
So, no, probably not. So similar experience then. Well, okay. So would you rather have the creepy servant, room service person who just pops up whenever? Or complete opposite. Would you rather have the ghost dog on site that creeps in your room as well? And it doesn't really do anything to you. It just kind of sits there and stares at you. So you have the, room service lady or the ghost dog. They're both ghosts, but...
Well, since I don't have the best track record with room service or housekeeping or whatever you want to call it, if I had the history on the dog and knew that the dog wasn't going to attack me, then I would 100% go with the dog, especially, if he wasn't going to hurt me. All good. All right. So, Jen, would you rather see a ghost in a building that you were on complete lockdown in for 24 hours? You cannot leave under any circumstances whatsoever. Or would you rather be in a room full of 10 different ghosts? Some have faces and eyes missing. Some are cute, but some are just super dead looking. And you have to stay in the room for just 1 hour with all of them. Damn,
that's a tough one. I mean, I'm a social person. I'm sure I could talk to all 10 and mentally pretend like I'm at a party or something where I don't really know anyone and I'm just trying to make friends. So, I mean, I could shorten my time. I feel like the 24 hours would be that's a little much because, what if the ghost is super annoying and follows me around the whole time and then I can't escape it? So then I might as well, I'll just get it over with in the hour, even though there's extras there.
That is very brave of you. Yeah. I commend you for that. Good job, Jen. Good answer. It's very much like you too. Just chatty Cathy over there. And just after this break, we're going to get into today's main topic, which is all about haunted Lunenburg. There's an old gallows, there's an old cemetery, and there's an old school. And they're all on the same property. Stay tuned.
All right, welcome back, everyone. We're going to get into some fantastic stories here. And the fun part is, they're all ones of a place that is not too far from here. A lovely town called Lunenburg on the south shore of Nova Scotia, which was founded way back in 1753. Its founding started with English Protestants moving in and trying to reclaim the land from the French. The sea surrounding the Lunenburg area was bountiful with fish, so it became quite the fishing community of its time. The town was planned in a grid-type fashion and is nestled on a hill, so literally every single house in the town of Old Lunenburg has a view of the water. It is known as being the best surviving example of planned British colonial settlement in North America. Today you can visit Lunenburg for a number of different reasons. They have amazing food, and I also have to add that I concur. They do have amazing food.
We've actually had a lunch date there in Lunenburg, haven't we, Jen?
Oh, we have. A wonderful feel about town. They have a distillery, they have a brewery, they have a fishing museum, great shops, and they have ghosts. You can go on a ghost walk of Lunenburg, probably because there are a lot of haunted locations within the small town. Whether you're visiting the Hillcrest Cemetery, the Old Gallows, or the rumored haunted Lunenburg Academy, you're bound to feel the hauntings and the spooky energy around you.
Yes, Lunenburg is one of my favorite places. When Ryan and I were actually looking at homes to move to on the South Shore, we looked at a couple in Lunenburg. But I just felt like since I was still working in the city, it was just that much further off of the highway. It's a 15-minute drive from the highway. So I didn't really think it was overly doable at the time. But now that I feel like I work part-time in the city, part-time everywhere else on the South Shore, then, it would make sense for me to make a little move. So yeah, if you find me a house that's partially redone that I can sort of pick away at, and it's an old house and has a lot of history and some great stories behind it, sign me up for Lunenburg. Let's get into the very first story, the story of Sophia. This was written by Caretakers Paranormal, a local Nova Scotian paranormal investigators group. Lunenburg is not only one of the most historic towns in Nova Scotia, but it's also one of the most haunted. From the ghosts that still reside in the local inns to the tales of hangings and legends, one story touched our hearts. They write, "During a recent visit to the historic town, we heard the tragic story of Sophia, a young girl whose tragic death will forever be remembered. Those who knew Sophia remembered her as a pretty girl, and at the young age of 14, she was eager to find work. So she was apprenticed to a Mrs. Trask, who owned a local dressmaking shop, which was located at 242 Lincoln Street. Things were going very well, and Mrs. Trask would often leave Sophia and her son Charles in the shop alone while she went about other tasks around town. One day, after counting the till, Mrs. Trask was short $10, which in those days was a considerable amount of money, and she accused Sophia of stealing from her. Sophia denied taking the money, but Mrs. Trask did not believe her and went around town telling everyone she met that Sophia was a thief. Sophia was, of course, devastated, and her family's reputation was ruined. Pleading her innocence, Sophia became very ill and was often observed lying on her sister's grave, crying and reading her Bible. With her mother's acceptance of Mrs. Trask's story, Sophia's conditions worsened, confining her to her room at what is now the site of 169 Pelham Street. At the insistence of a friend, a doctor was called, but he could not prevent her death, and on September 19th, 1879, Sophia passed away. Amid speculation by the members of the community, a coroner's jury was summoned to hold an inquiry into Sophia's death. The unanimous decision for the cause of her death was by paralysis of her heart, brought on by extreme agitation and peculiar circumstances. Just prior to her death, Sophia wrote the following letter. To her accuser, she maintained her innocence, stating, "I am near gone. My hand trembles so that I can scarcely write. There will be many a long hour that you may think of this, if you have any heart at all. I did not take your money. It is a fearful thing to lie. Tell blank to read for my sake chapters of Exodus and also chapters of Matthew. I am not afraid to fear death. I know a secret, but I ain't going to say anything about it. I can't write any more. Your friend, Sophia L. McLaughlin." From Exodus, the quote says, "Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor." And from Matthew, it says, "Blessed are ye when men shall revile you, and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake." Sometime after Sophia's death, Mrs. Trask's son, Charles, admitted to the theft. Some believe that Charles and Sophia were in love and that he took the $10 so he could buy something nice for her, but he was too ashamed to admit it before she died. Was this the secret that Sophia was referring to? Mrs. Trask and her son Charles moved away from Lunenburg shortly afterwards. No record of their place of residing exists. Sophia's family maintained their residence in Lunenburg, where Sophia's father, Joseph, applied his trade as a shipwright. Some say that if you visit Sophia's grave, you may just hear her sigh and hear her laughter as she plays with her sister, who is buried beside her. Sophia is laid to rest in the Hillcrest Cemetery, right next to the Lunenburg Academy. Her grave bears a wrought iron chain enclosure with an iron broken heart hanging in the center.
That's sad. But I do have to say, because Trask is a very, uncommon name. And my friend Mary, that is her last name. And
yes, of
I
course.
feel like I need to ask her now, like, are you sure you don't have any relatives down the South Shore? Because she's from Muscatau, but like Harbor Way. So that would make sense. I mean, it's along the coast here. So you never know. But like, I feel like I'm going to have to ask her now because that's just not a normal name. So I feel like, yeah, maybe she's a distant relative.
Maybe she is. Get her to look into the history. That's awesome.
Okay. Well, let's get into our second story, why don't we? This is about the Lunenburg Academy. It was built between 1893 and 1895. It is a massive 3-story wooden Victorian building in the eclectic tradition, boldly painted in red, black, and white in the town of Lunenburg, Nova Scotia. It still functions as a school of musical arts and has commercial office spaces on the other floors. It is located in a key location at the top of Gallows Hill and is visible from most viewpoints when approaching Lunenburg. A few paranormal groups have had the pleasure of investigating the property, and most have come back with evidence of a haunting. Some believe that it is the old janitor of the academy coming back to check in on things. One of the current employees who works in the building also had an encounter with this apparition rather recently in the basement. The basement was nicknamed the dungeon by scared students, the story going back to when the academy was used only as a school. It's mostly thanks to an evil feeling which pervaded the space and the rumor of a monster inhabiting one of the toilet stalls. Little boys were dared to enter alone, while girls refused to go inside unless they were in pairs. Really, the more compelling ghost story is about Sidney Kernickel, the school janitor who was such a strong spiritual force in the academy that an unknown ghost hunters TV show paid $50,000 for a local to show them around the building, eventually capturing an image of a face in one of the windows.
That is a very expensive photo. 50 grand.
Yes. When the image was circulated around Lunenburg, someone pulled out a yearbook from 1960 and identified Mr. Kernickel. Others say, though, that there is another spirit who hangs out in the academy. According to Mary G. Reed, a Canadian mystery writer, a man who she knew told her quite the tale. He was working as the night security in the old school. He went in at supper time as the work for the day finished. One of his duties was to go through the 3-story structure on a walk around to make sure no one had snuck in to vandalize the place. On his first tour, he reached the 3rd floor without incident. He glanced back down the stairwell and realized the light was on in the library. He was sure he had turned it off. He raced back down the stairs thinking he'd missed seeing someone. Sure enough, the light was on and there was a young boy sitting at one of the tables with a book. "What are you doing?" he asked the lad, who looked up, smiled, and said, "Just reading." Although it seemed odd, he decided to leave the boy there. After all, he was doing no harm. "You can stay for now," he said, "but not too long." The boy nodded. On his next walk through, he found the boy still there. "It's getting dark," he said. "Your mother will be wondering where you are. You need to go now." The boy turned, smiled, and poof, was gone in an instant. The man shivered and, shutting off the light and locking the door, continued on his rounds. He did not look in the library again that night, and I don't blame him at all.
Me either.
So, I wouldn't have continued my job. Like, if I... So you just continued on your merry way and was like, well, that was weird, and then just kept, checking, doing your rounds? Like, what? The mystery boy in the library, and you're just like, well, I guess that happened, and here we are, so...
I would have been like, it's time for me to go home and change my pants.
Wow, I guess.
Nope, calling it a night and not going back. Thanks, Lunenburg Academy.
Yeah, no, I would have been gone after that. I've been like, thanks, and have a great night.
All right, now we're going to get into Gallows Hill. Although it's hard to imagine it without seeing its existence, it's still there. But it's buried beneath the lush green grass of the Lunenburg Academy's backyard. All 3 locations that we told you stories about today are on the same property within all the same vicinity, literally next to or on top of each other. Gallows Hill of Lunenburg has been the topic of an archaeological exploration from St. Mary's University of Halifax, which started back in 2013. The archaeologists and students have determined where the site used to be and have discovered some strange anomalies of the property, which actually have some crazy magnetic susceptibilities. They believe that there is a line of wooden or iron stakes underground, which once served as a fortification surrounding the area. A man named Terry, last name unknown, served as a carpenter on the school of the property. He worked on a number of different projects, but one stood out to him more than the rest. It was the time that he was trying to finish up one of the towers on the school. The hairs on the back of his neck started to stand up. a track of prickly hairs started to form on his scalp. Oh, I know that feeling far too well. Anyway, he started to look around, and what he saw was in the middle of the tower. He saw a man just hanging, strung up by his neck. His sightless eyes were staring right through Terry. He closed his eyes tight and quickly. When he opened them again, the man was gone. Creeped out, he left the tower for the rest of the day. However, twice more he ended up seeing the poor man while working there, but the first time he saw him was a sight he would never, ever forget. The apparition didn't seem to want to harm Terry. It just seemed to get him to want to see what had happened to him there. The history of the Gallows Hill is pretty hard to find as it didn't stay in operation for very long, but it has been known that at least one man was hung on the property. Interesting. Well, that pretty much concludes the storytelling portion of our episode. If you want to subscribe to the podcast to hear all of our stories, all of the other 75 stories that we've done, please find us wherever you listen to your podcasts or even on YouTube. We are on Apple, Google, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and many others. And if you want to find us on social media, we're on Instagram at Booze and Bourbon, and that is BOOSAND Bourbon. And we're also on Facebook as Booze and Bourbon, the podcast. You can find our merch on our Redbubble store, which is Booze and Bourbon, all spelled out, .redbubble.com.
And I'm quite excited for my shipment of things that I purchased today from that. And you can find us on patreon.com/booze and bourbon. If you want to go give us some support, if you sign up to be a Patreon with membership starting at $5, you will automatically get access to all of our videos. We usually do them before an episode comes out so you can see what the upcoming episode is. And you will get some free stuff. As always, you get a monthly shout out on the show.
Thank you to everyone who supports us.
I mean, we really appreciate it.
Yeah, like from the bottom of our ghostly little hearts, we need to thank you guys because anybody who listens, gives us support, anybody who's a patron, you just keep making the show better and better. And we hope that you guys sincerely enjoy the growth that's been happening with our show.
Other ways to support our show are tell a friend, rate and review us on our podcast platform, follow us on social media, or just show us some love. And we would love to be able to send you all bottles of bourbon as a thank you, but we also need our own bourbon and, struggle is real. So for now, we'll just give you some free jazz and lots of love from us.
And before we go, don't forget to like and follow all notifications on our Facebook page so that you don't miss out on our Facebook Live event, which is taking place this Monday, June 15th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time or 9 p.m. Atlantic. We will be talking with paranormal investigator John Huntington, and he will be live at the house that inspired the Conjuring movie, the real Conjuring house. So you don't want to miss this. As always, you will hear another brand new episode next Friday. So have a great week and sip some bourbon and stay super spooky.
Thanks, guys.
Booze and Bourbon is part of the ABV network. For more information or to advertise on the show, please head over to abvnetwork.com. Thanks for listening and cheers.
This has been a Steve Akeley production.